So welcome everyone. I'm Andrea Darabos and I'm here with my co-author Beth Davis. And together we have authored the new book, Agile People Principles, your call to action for the future of work. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you, Andrea.
Beth is an amazingly passionate change maker in the world of talent, people, organizational change. And our journey has been really unique. We met through this book authoring process. Beth is based in the US. She's from Pennsylvania in Pittsburgh, though she has mixed heritage, cultural heritage, also tracing back to Scotland and England. And that's also a nice link to me being based in the UK.
That's right. That's right.
Beth is also a facilitator of change of HR teams improving their agility. She talks about culture change, inspect and adapt, small step change in how companies can embrace talent. And she's also a member of the Scrum global community, so a true agilist herself, which is very unique.
Thank you.
I'm curious though, what drew you to Agile People specifically as a community? How did you find your way?
Yeah, Andrea, thank you so much for that kind introduction. That just that made me feel so good. Yeah, it's interesting. I started my career 20 years ago. My first job was in people development, which, at the time I didn't realize was unique in the world of HR. And I bring that up because, I always loved the idea of collaborating with people and, figuring out the best solutions and the best processes with others, not just the people that were in our department. And so for all these years, I was always going into different companies and sometimes bumping up against traditional HR, not because they're, bad people. It was just, I think there's a better way. And as I learned more about the Agile movement. My husband brought it to my attention. He's a software developer. And I thought, gosh, that's how I like to work. And this idea of Scrum and these things I was learning just sounded so cool. And so I started to just play with it, quite frankly, in how I was leading HR teams and projects. And I stumbled upon the book Agile People by Pia Maria Thorin. And I called her or emailed her as soon as I could. And I said, who are you? I need to know you, because I felt like I was alone a little bit on an island. Not that others in the US aren't thinking of these things. So this was about 3 years ago. And I just said, we need to talk. and subsequently have stayed connected in the community and became one of the first Agile People facilitators here in the US. And just as you said, passionate about connecting this work together and finding this global community to be a part of. Was just such an added bonus because, you don't know if you're the only one or does anybody else care, and finding you all has just been so beautiful because we get to influence the world together. And then when this opportunity to write a chapter in the book came up, forget it, I was in. I love to write and communicate. My father's a retired English teacher and taught creative writing. And so it was just such a wonderful opportunity to do something in the world. So yeah, and that's how I found this path.
Amazing self-woven career and self-managing career. And this naturally led to you choosing to write, because we had the choice to write on any Agile People principle, and you chose the principle self-organization. So could you tell us a little bit more? Do you have a personal development story, perhaps, or what made you choose self-organization?
Yeah, initially I chose it because I thought, God, that's a hard topic to try to write about because it can be so misunderstood or misconstrued. Or quite frankly, some people misinterpret it to a point of it's threatening in the organizational context. Like, oh gosh, everyone's going to self-organize. What does that mean to me as a manager and a leader? So I took it on for that reason, because I believe that, with all of the principles or anything, it's important to give it its respect and really help people be set up for success. So I wanted someone to read the chapter and say, oh, I understand now. And I can go apply this rather than a lot of theory. And so I really stepped back and thought about the power of self-organization ultimately comes down to leaders creating work environments that allow it to thrive and happen. And in the book chapter, when you read it, I get into a very specific story about my own journey towards shifting my own leadership style. I had fallen into a very traditional way of thinking about being a people leader as a top down, I've got all this responsibility and everyone needs to listen to my strategy. And I was so miserable with that, and yet didn't know my other choices. And so I've done a lot of personal development and still developing today in servant leadership, and have found that that is the way to allow others to thrive, in that my job as a leader is to help you be more successful, and when I started to make that personal shift, that then made it start to click for me that that's where self-organization can happen, because as a leader, I'm shifting more into a coach role and less of a teller, and not always easy. People are used to you telling them what to do. Like, it's my direction, it's my strategy. Here's what I need you to do, team. And when you start to make that shift to say, okay, here's what I'd like us to be doing, like directionally, what are your best ideas? Sometimes you get crickets, like people just look at you like, well,
silence.
like, what do you want me to say? And so, yeah, that's really what sparked me to write this chapter, is because I think that it's not a technique, self-organization isn't a technique. It's really a strategy of empowerment.
On that point, I can absolutely resonate with your story and reflection on writing about a deeper level, almost like a value-based principle. As an Agile HR professional, you have a lot of knowledge and experience also on taking these very software-originated practices and methods and frameworks like the Scrum framework, which helps teams deliver value rapidly in iterations, short time frames of 1 to 4 weeks, delivering value repetitively to customers and getting feedback. What is though a big fear in many organizations is, it's relatively easy to adopt a new practice or have a sprint planning and then a daily stand-up and then a retrospective and a demo at the end of the sprint, or an iteration review if we use the correct word. However, it's much harder to actually let go of control and not be the boss or the manager of the team who tells what the team should be doing or how even they should be working. And this let go of control comes with a lot of fear of, will it work? How can we try it out, this self-organizing team principle, in a more gradual way? And you hinted that it comes with shocks as well.
Yeah, it does. It so does. I love that, the idea of incremental, right? And when I started to think about making these changes, it's, as a leader, being courageous to tell people why you want to do something different and what's behind it. Because I think sometimes, particularly when you're in a position of true authority, and again, I believe everyone is leading themselves, right? Self-leadership is an important tie-in here, which we can talk about in a minute. But as you're a titled leader, there comes some gravity and responsibility with that job. And you start to want to make changes and people don't know why. It can become almost, people think it's inauthentic. And I think the first step is to tell people the why. Here's why I want to try this project differently this time. Here's personally why I'm changing my behavior, why it matters to me. And I think that gets into creating a more open, safe environment. But then also, like you said, bringing these different ways of working together, in a top-down, very structured environment. You can bring in a framework like Scrum. You can use Kanban. You can bring in lean process, work. But if you're not connecting to the values and the people side of it, you get, as I say often, better sameness. You don't get the true change. And I think then taking this incremental step of self-organization, you don't just kind of wave your magic wand and say, self-organize. I'm a Harry Potter fan, by the way. But you don't just wave this wand and it happens. You really want to try it out. So where could you try an experiment to say, we're not going to even call it self-organization. We're just going to say, hey, here's an idea. Can you guys come back to me in a day with some of your best ideas? Let's brainstorm. But you guys go off and let's talk about it. Well, that's a step to creating a safer environment. Okay, let's take that first best idea as a team. When do you think you could get something done on that? and again, it's that incremental, what's something valuable you could get done, not the whole thing, but let's try it out and see what happens. But for a lot of people, again, we talked before, that bias of, yeah, but if it doesn't go well, I think you might not be happy. Right. And I think it's making it safe for people to do experimentation like that without it being the most important project in the world that everyone's going to see. Let's maybe start with something that's less significant, only because it gives us a chance to experiment and mess it up and then learn from it.
Absolutely. And I would like to share a little nugget from your writing on that. This cycle of incrementally changing the manager's behavior is a really good idea. And you do share your personal efforts in two separate situations, where you had an existing team, and how it's much harder to suddenly introduce new style of leadership when your team is already used to a certain you before. And then another story when you were in a new environment and you could kind of start from scratch. I think there is a very, very nice concept here of the heroic leadership becoming a bottleneck, which is you attribute to the Third River partners. They call it the self-reinforcing cycle of heroic leadership. Could you tell us a little bit about this pitfall that we might
Sure. Yeah, no, and I love the concept. So Third River Partners is a group here in Pittsburgh, actually, wrote a book called The Serving Leader, actually, action orientation. But the idea is, in summary, this idea of, typically a leader, sets the direction, sets the strategy, gets that communicated, pushed down, so to speak, into their teams. And then normally what happens, right, when you're saying, okay, here's the strategy, here's the direction, here's what I want you to do, the team tends to then silo up, here's my responsibilities, here's my piece of this pie. I don't care about the rest of it. I'm only focused on my piece. And yet as a leader, I'm also sitting, well, no, wait, I want your best ideas. And I where's the innovations? And why aren't you collaborating? And then what happens is then the leader falls back in to say, oh, never mind, I'll just tell you what to do, right? So instead of empowering that self-organization, I'm just going to fall back into this habit, and it reinforces itself because I'm not seeing people step up. I'm not seeing people collaborate. I've got to step in and tell everybody what to do again. And here I am again with the weight of the world on my shoulders. And so it's breaking that cycle is hard, but it's you got to look in the mirror first as the leader to say, you're saying you want all these innovations and self-organization to come to reality, but if you're quickly reacting to, I'm perceiving no one is stepping up, I'm perceiving there's no ideas, it might be because of how I've set the team in motion. It might be me, which I do talk about in the book. In that case, it was me. And that's not because I was trying to be heroic. It was just, I think the culture of the companies also reward that or expect that. And when you want to make these changes, you get caught up a little bit in the ecosystem as well.
It is a nice tie into another chapter in the book, in fact, written by Annick Blaine on self-leadership. And in your experience, you talk about learning about a mindset shift about the role of managers, which is described nicely in the book Servant Leadership by Robert Greenleaf. And I would like to just quote a little bit from this book on how they say it's a philosophical shift, servant leadership, about the role of the leader. And from playing a hero and making all the important decisions and saving the teams, shifting your role to serving other people and helping others fulfill their potential, become their best successful selves. Do you think this is really key for leaders in an organization to first go through a bit of reflection and really redefine what their role is in order to achieve self-organization around them?
Absolutely. It comes down to, it's a choice, and I think for me personally, it was a choice I wasn't aware that I had. And then once I became aware that it was a choice that I could make, that would be supported by others, and some not, but it came back to my own self-leadership. I have a choice how I want to show up, how I want to live my life, and how I want to use my time. in the world, quite frankly. So leading ourselves first is so important, because often you go to leadership training and it's like, here, do these things, say these things, and voila, you're going to be a better leader. And it is about self leadership and regulating your choices, and the connection to heroic leadership too is that becomes fragile, right? So if we want to be a more agile organization, right, and we want to lean into these principles, and yet we've got leaders who put all this pressure on themselves to know everything and be everything, or HR teams that do this to themselves, we become fragile, because it's not only an effect on productivity and performance, but that individual leader's well-being, and if you think about that stress and pressure, that then permeates to the team, that you're saying, oh yeah, I want your best ideas, but here I am all anxious and stressed out and kind of, is it done yet? Is it done yet? We don't get the benefits of agility. We don't get the benefits of diversity and inclusion and best ideas. We don't get engagement. We don't get trust. We get kind of that organization that just is kind of, it's good enough for now. And, we're okay with turnover. And maybe this is the shift. It's really about first how we show up and what choices we're making. And then kind of looking back retrospectively and saying, why are we getting those results? Well, maybe because some of our behaviors aren't so helpful, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So to give a little bit of taster for readers of this book, could you give us 3 tips? How could a manager, a leader, or even a team member get started with contributing to creating more self-organization around them?
Mm-hmm. No, it's I think first off, it's about self-reflection. You said this before. I think it's stepping back and having the courage to think about where things have been successful and where they haven't, and kind of taking stock in what was my role in that, and not just on the success, but also on the challenges. I think so. Being self-reflective, deepening knowledge on things like servant leadership, and kind of understanding it as an important self-development. And then I think, the second one would be inviting people in to think with you, so if you've not even done that before, just a simple, let's brainstorm together, being clear as the leader, saying, none of this is a to-do. This is just, I want to get thinking, going, here's why, and I maybe never asked you before, so let me tell you why I'm asking. Yes. And then, also looking at what can be delegated. I talk about decision delegation and delegation poker from, Management 3.0 as a fun way to work with a team of people to figure out, like, what could be delegated to the team to decide? Like, do I have to decide everything as a leader? But let's do it collaboratively. Because you get more buy-in. And I think these are ways that you can start to get that wheel spinning and get more comfortable with it. Because let's say you make a mistake on delegating something and it goes badly, you made the decision together. So it's not like it's anyone's fault. It's just, okay, we experimented and we learned something. And isn't that the agile way, is let's experiment and learn and continuously improve from it. And I think that's a powerful way to start to bring this principle forward.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think I am speaking to a true agilist who might not even notice that she is suggesting that to our readers to apply agility, iterative, incremental experimentation to increase self-organization in everyone's organizations in the future. Has your experience, on a closing note, Beth, writing this book with almost 50 authors from around the world, many contributors, all in different cultures, time zones. Has this been self-organization? Were we on the right path?
Oh yeah, ask me. No, we were. And what's interesting is it is messy and beautiful all at the same time. And you watch the tension happen, and when, there still has to be a direction, right? And I think that what served us well is we know we want to write this book. We know we want to launch it to the world. How we get there and how we got there changed, and it changed not daily, but weekly. We incrementally adjusted ourselves and made sure that we were always very clear about what was happening next. And I think what was interesting about it is over this several months experience is watching people settle into the discomfort of not knowing everything. And I think that it was a beautiful example of it. But also watching it happen as a coach, and as a person who observes people's behavior, you do see, not everyone is going to be comfortable in working this way automatically. And that is okay. It's just, as a leader, I think that's the shifting, is when you watch people start to get a little bit, uncomfortable with this. It's not kicking them out or saying they're a problem. It's leaning into it and saying, okay, what else could be helpful to you, or I'm noticing these things when you're with the team, help me understand, because it changes very personal. And I think in our book project, it's the way we did this was very agile. And not everyone is comfortable immediately with some uncertainty and ambiguity, but as a team, we were able to support each other. And I think that's really what it's about, because at the end of the day, we're delivering something that's very valuable, and we did it together.
Absolutely. And I can second that. We really had the space and the opportunity with having a very clear aligned challenge with set dates and the deliveries, book and conference, spreading our ideas and welcoming feedback from all our viewers, readers, colleagues all around the world. This allowed us, energized us to then self-organize, and we still needed leadership, not just centralized, but leadership from everyone, from all of us. So this can be a rocky, but a good example of a real world project of not within self-organization within a company, but really micro companies and brands coming together globally and making a book and a conference happen. So thank you so much for your reflection on that.
Thank you.
It has been a delight to interview you, Beth, and learn more about you. My conclusion, self-organization is hard, and it starts with our journey as leaders, our personal development journey, and our self-awareness. And only then, as we become better at leading ourselves, we can iteratively run experiments and grow our teams to self-organizing machines.
That's awesome. I love it so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And I think just parting words, the principles are what we stand on, and all of them strengthen each other. And so I hope that as you're listening or reading, you see the connection, that all these principles and how they just together create a stronger organization and a stronger chance to be that much more successful. So I appreciate you, Andrea, for making the time, and we'll talk to everyone hopefully really soon.
Yes, looking forward to speaking to everyone in September on the conference. Thank you.
Bye for now. All right.